All right, I gotta show you the sun before we go in my car because everyone walks right here. I was down below on the beach walking, but I made it up after my meeting for we're gonna read Evelyn Underhill, Mysticism, the nature and development of spiritual consciousness. So sometimes I do this so we can see the sunset. I just wanted to start the video already while the sun was still up. It's wild, I tell you, wild. Okay, so I have the book right here. Keep it in my car. Whoops. I hope you're doing well. Be really, really present. You can start here or you can start in the videos before this. I hope it switches over to this mic. So Evelyn Underhill influenced C.S. Lewis and Tolkien. She was a predecessor to them and corresponded with C.S. Lewis. And anyway, I wrote about her in the description so you can read about her there. And all right, let's begin. Amazing part. She's talking about the mystic way. So we're in the second half of the book. And as much as I can show you the sunset, I just want to respect people's privacy. So, but they're looking sideways mostly, and it's not a busy night tonight, I don't think. All right. So the book is from 1910, so it's legally free copyright for us. All right, I'm gonna set this down again. I just have to set it in a way that I can see that you're seeing the ocean and the sunset. I could like run out of my car. I think I'll do that. No, I'm not going to be able to see from them. Just take the mic off. Okay. Otherwise, you're just getting nothing. All right. I think that'll be it. Okay. Let me think if there's anything else I can tell you guys, because then I can just let go of the camera. I have good. I have a mirror. I'm looking at a compact. Hopefully that changed the lighting. This is hilarious. Okay. It's because I don't have an app yet that flips it. You know what I mean? So where I can face myself and then face the camera out. Okay. So welcome. The last two videos have been so amazing. And the one before that was on magic, mysticism and magic, what that really actually means and how not to get in the occult. But anyway, okay, so we're on the awakening of the self. And I watched such a great YouTube video about this today from a lady who, I guess she wrote 28 books on intuition. And anyway, her talk today, I just learned so many things. But I'll have to talk about it later if it comes up. So, we're on the part, it says, not the God of philosophers and of scholars, cries in amazement, this great scholar and philosopher abruptly turned from knowledge to love. Let me think where we are, because I know we're on the right side of the page, I think. But, oh yes, we were talking about Blaise Pascal Pascal, I knew this because I think it was him or Newton studied the Bible codes. And so anyway, I won't go into that. There's so many amazing facts about the Bible codes. It's so strange. Anyway, I'll talk some other time maybe. So he had this thing, his spiritual experience that he had, and he wrote down on a piece of paper, and he would keep it inside his jacket. His one of his servants found it after he died, but it was written in French, so I couldn't read it for us. Oh, I could take a picture of it actually, and I have a translator that translates it, but it's on my phone. So let me read where we were. From 10:30 till 12:30, fire. That is all, so far as description is concerned, but enough apparently to remind the initiate of all that had passed, right? The rest tells us only the passion of joy and conviction, which this nameless revelation, this long blazing vision of reality, brought in its train. It is but a series of amazed exclamations, crude, breathless words, placed there, helter-skelter, the artist in him utterly in abeyance, the names of the overpowering emotions which swept him one after the other, as the fire of love disclosed its secrets, evoked an answering flame of humility and rapture in his soul. Dieu de Abraham, so God of Abraham, Dieu de Isaac, Dieu de Jacob, God of Abraham, God of Isaac, God of Jacob. It's in French right now. Non de philosophies et de savants. None of the philosophies, and I don't know what savants is. Certitude, which is certain. Certitude, sentiment. Joy, pax. So joy and peace, he's saying. I don't know. Anyway, certainty. Anyway. Oh, good. So I think she's translating it. Not the God of philosophers and of scholars, he cries in amazement. This great scholar and philosopher abruptly turned from knowledge to love. Oh, there's more in French. And he says again, seeing his universe suddenly swept clean of all but this transcendent fact, then the world, le monde, anyway, people she's from England, so I guess she studied French. I studied Spanish and Greek and Hebrew, and I lived in Montreal for a year, so I know some French, but joy, lots of joy, pleur de joy. Compare with the classic style the sharp and lucid definition of the pensées, the irony and glitter of the provinciales. These little broken phrases, this childlike stammering speech, in which a supreme master of language has tried to tell his wonder and his delight. I know few things in the history of mysticism at once more convincing, more poignant than this hidden talisman, upon which the brilliant scholar and stylist, the merciless disputant, has jotted down in hard, crude words, which yet seem charged with passion, the inarticulate language of love, a memorial of the certitude, the peace, the joy, above all, the reiterated, all-surpassing joy, which accompanies his ecstatic apprehension of God, Wow, look at that sunset. I hope you're seeing it. I don't know if I introduced myself. My name's Dr. Cheryl Meyer. I'm a psychologist in my day job for the past 20 plus years. I've been studying it for 30 plus years because it took me 9 years to get my doctorate before, and I've been practicing for over 20. And so sometimes, and I study mysticism, and I have almost a master's in theology, and I'm a licensed lay minister. And so I have studied these things, and so sometimes I'll comment, but, you know, I like to defer to her. Obviously, it's her book, and she's great. She's amazing and brilliant. I love her. Evelyn Underhill. Mon Dieu, mais qu'êtes-vous? My God, something you. He says again, the fire apparently beginning to die down, the ecstasy drawing to an end. occasion and separar eternellement. Okay, so this PDF is in my description box. So if you want to look up this page, it's on the Awakening Self. It's page 229 in this book, but you can, if someone speaks French and wants to do the work of looking this up, please put it in the comments for us. Oh, okay, look, I think she translated it this time. Are you going to leave me? Ah, that's like that song, Ne me quitte pas, Don't Quit Me. It's a beautiful French song. I'm not saying it correctly. Are you going to leave me? Oh, let me not be separated from you forever. The one unendurable thought which would, said Aquinas, rob the beatific vision of its glory, were we not sure that it can never fade. Thank God. Anyway, but the rhapsody is over, the vision of the fire has gone, and the rest of the memorial clearly contains Pascal's meditations upon his experience, rather than a transcript of the experience itself. It ends with the watchword of all mysticism, surrender. Renunciation, totale et deus. In Pascal's words, the only way he thinks in which he can avoid continued separation from reality is this surrender. So, anyway, Pascal's long vision of light, life, and love was highly ecstatic, an indescribable, incommunicable experience, which can only be suggested by his broken words of certitude and joy. But by his simple contemporary, Brother Lawrence, that transcendent reality who, quote, is not the God of philosophers and scholars, end quote, was perceived in a moment of abrupt intuition, peculiarly direct, unecstatic, and untheological in type, but absolutely enduring in its results. Brother Lawrence, right? Lawrence was an uneducated young man of the peasant class who first served as a soldier and afterwards as a footman in a great French family, where he annoyed his masters by breaking everything. When he was between 50 and 60 years of age, he entered the Carmelite order as a lay brother, and the letters, spiritual maxims, and conversations belonging to this period of his life were published after his death in 1691. Quote, he told me, says the anonymous reporter of the conversation, supposed to be Mr. Beaufort, or Madame Beaufort, it's just M, who was about 1660 Grand Vicar, I guess that's a Mr., to the Cardinal de Noailles, quote, that God had done him a singular favor in his conversion at the age of 18, that in the winter, seeing a tree stripped of its leaves, and considering that within a little time the leaves would be renewed, and after that the flowers and fruit appear, he received a high view of the providence and power of God, which has never since been effaced from his soul. That this view had set him perfectly loose from the world and kindled in him such a love for God that he could not tell whether it had increased in about 40 years that he had lived since. Such use of the visible nature as the stuff of ontological perceptions, the medium whereby the self reaches out to the absolute, is not rare in the history of mysticism, kind of like us with our sunset right now. The mysterious primordial vitality of trees and woods, instinct with energy, yet standing as it were upon the borderland of dream, appears, we know not why, to be particularly adapted to the silent magic of the forest. The strange and steady cycle of its life possesses in a peculiar degree this power of unleashing the human soul, is curiously friendly to its cravings, ministers to its inarticulate needs, unsullied by the corroding touch of consciousness that life can make a contact with the great life of the all. And through its mighty rhythms, man can receive a message concerning the true and timeless world of, quote, all that is and was and evermore shall be. Plant life of all kinds, indeed, from the flower in the crannied wall to the woods of the Westermain, can easily become for selves of a certain type a mode of the infinite, So obvious does this appear when we study the history of the mystics that Steiner had seen fit to draw from it the hardly warrantable inference that plants are just those natural phenomena whose qualities in the higher world are similar to their qualities in the physical world. I forgot, I'm almost out of battery. Okay, I'll go for a little bit longer so we get more of the sunset. Through the conclusion, but not convincing, the fact remains that the flowery garment of the world is for some mystics a medium of ineffable perception, a source of exalted joy, the veritable clothing of God. I need hardly add that such a taste of things has always been found incredible by common sense. The tree which moves some to tears of joy, says Blake, who possessed in an eminent degree this form of sacramental perception, is in the eyes of others only a green thing that stands in the way. Such a perception of the divine in nature, of the true and holy meaning of that rich, unresting life in which we are immersed, is really a more usual feature of illumination than of conversion. All the most marked examples of it must be referred to that state, and will be discussed when we come to its consideration sometime. Sometimes, however, as in the case of Brother Lawrence, the first awakening of the self to consciousness of reality does take this form. This uncreated light manifests itself in and through created things. This characteristically eminental discovery of the absolute occurs chiefly in two classes: in unlettered men who have lived close to nature, men or women, and to whom her symbols are more familiar than those of the churches or the schools, and in temperaments of mixed or mystical type, who are nearer to the poet than to the true contemplative, for whom, as a rule, the absolute hath no image. It was like entering into another world, a new state. Here's a quote again. It was like entering into another world, a new state of existence, end quote, says a witness quoted by Starbuck. Speaking of his own conversion, natural objects were glorified. My spiritual vision was so clarified that I saw beauty in every material object in the universe. The woods were vocal with heavenly music. Oh, how I was changed! Everything became new. My horses and hogs and everybody became changed, exclaims with naive astonishment another in the same collection. Quote, when I went in the morning into the fields to work, says a third, quote, the glory of God appeared in all his visible creation. I well remember we reaped oats, and how every straw and head of the oats seemed, as it were, arrayed in a kind of rainbow glory, or to glow, if I may so express it, in the glory of God, end quote. Amongst modern men, Walt Whitman possessed a man that's really good at this is, if you look him up on YouTube, if you haven't found him yet, one of my German friends is just so happy that I introduced him to this guy named John Butler. He's meditated for 60 years. He's a Christian, but he seems like Buddhist and all these other things. He's just so present. It's so beautiful. It's like how you imagine Christ would walk around this earth. Not that this guy's perfect, but just really expanded point of view and really humble and just poignant and poetic and just hard on his sleeve. I just love John Butler. Anyway, amongst modern men, Walt Whitman possessed in a supreme degree the permanent sense of this glory, the, quote, light, rare, untellable, lighting the very light. But evidences of its existence and the sporadic power of apprehending it are scattered up and down the literature of the world. Its discovery constitutes the awakening of the mystical consciousness in respect of the world of becoming, a sharp and sudden break with the old and obvious way of seeing things, the human cinematograph, has somehow changed its rhythm and begins to register new and more real aspects of the external world. With this, the self's first escape from the limitations of its conventional universe, it receives an immense assurance of a great and veritable life surrounding, sustaining, explaining its own. Thus, Richard Jefferies says, of the same age as that as which Suso and Brother Lawrence awoke to sudden consciousness of reality. Quote, I was not more than 18 when an inner and esoteric meaning began to come to me from all the visible universe. Esoteric just means hidden, but it's meant to be revealed. Quote, I now became lost and absorbed into the being or existence of the universe, and losing thus my separateness of being, came to seem like a part of the whole. I feel on the margin of a life unknown, very near, almost touching it, on the verge of powers which, if I could grasp, would give me an immense breadth of existence. End quote. What was this life unknown but the life known to the great mystics, where Richard Jefferies apprehended in those moments of insight, yet somehow contrived to miss? Such participation in the deep realities of the world of becoming, the boundless existence of a divine whole, which a modern psychologist has labeled and described as cosmic consciousness. Oh, that's so rad. She knew about cosmic consciousness. I think she's talking about Carl Jung. Let me see. Book. Cosmic Consciousness, a study in the evolution of the human mind. No, a guy named Bucke, 1905. Well, only 5 years before she wrote this, right? Has been labeled and described as a cosmic consciousness. Whilst it's not the final object of the mystic's journey, it is a constant feature of it. It represents one half of his characteristic consciousness, an entrance into the communion with the second of the triune powers of God, the Word which is through all things everlastingly. Jeffrey stood, as so many mystically minded men have done, upon the verge of such a transcendental life. The, quote, heavenly door, as Roll calls it, was ajar but not pushed wide. He peeped through it to the greater world beyond, but unable to escape from the bounds of his selfhood, he did not pass through to live upon the independent spiritual plane. All right. I'm going to plug this in because I don't want to run out of batteries. I don't know if my charger will charge it. Now my mic's not going to work too. Hopefully all the sound is good. I might have to stop this for a second to see if it's charging. Okay. All right, it's charging now. Technology, right? It's a little bit different for the mystics, right? Okay. Roll, Jeffrey's fellow countryman, and his predecessor by close upon 600 years in the ecstatic love and understanding of natural things, shall be our last example of the mystical awakening. He, like his spiritual brother St. Francis, and in other typical cases, has passed through a preliminary period of struggle and oscillation between worldly life and a vague but growing spirituality, between the superficial and the deeper self. My youth, here's a quote, my youth was fond, my childhood vain, my young age unclean, but when I should flourish unhappily, and youth of wakeful age was now come, the grace of my Maker was near, the which lust of temporal shape restrained, and unto ghostly supplications turned my desire, and the soul from low things lifted to heaven has borne. The real life-changing, however, was sharply and characteristically marked off from this preparatory state. Rohl associates it with the state which he calls heat, the form in which his ardor of soul was translated to the surface consciousness. Heat, soothly I call, when the mind truly is kindled in love everlasting, and the heart on the same manner to burn, not hopingly, but verily is felt. The heart truly turned into fire gives feeling of burning love. Hunka, 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 burning love. I remember Elvis saying that just because this family friend of ours, this older man, he was like my parents' age, would sing that song on the piano. I think he'd play it like, Great Balls of Fire, that one. And anyway, it's more than that. It's like, I fell into a burning ring of fire. The purgation, when God cleans you, it's like a fire. And if you resist it, then it's a fire that hurts. It hurts anyway, but it's for love's sake, so you endure it. Heat in the form of his ardor of soul, which was translated to the surface consciousness. Heat soothly I call, when the mind truly is kindled in love everlasting, and the heat on the same manner to burn, not hopingly, but verily is felt, the heart truly turned into fire, gives feeling of burning love. This burning heat is not merely a mental experience. In it, we have an unusual, but not unique form of psychophysical parallelism, a bodily expression of the psychic travail and the distress accompanying the, quote, new birth. The sun is behind the clouds. The ocean's beautiful, but I was forsooth marveled. Wait, let me see where it says. New birth. More have I marveled than I show, forsooth, he says in his prologue, when I first felt my heart wax warm and truly, not imaginally, but as it were with a sensible fire burned. Oh, I was feeling that yesterday. I think some today anyway. I forsooth marveled. I was forsooth marveled as this burning burst up in my soul and of an unwanted solace. For in my ignorance of such healing abundance, oft have I groped my breast, seeing whether this burning were of any bodily cause outwardly. But when I knew that only it was kindled of ghostly cause inwardly, and this burning was not of fleshly love or desire, and this, I conceived it was the gift of my Maker. That's mine today. I was going deeply into my soul. Further on, he gives another and more detailed account. Quote, from the beginning, forsooth, of my life changing, and of my mind to the opening of the heavenly door, which thy face showed, that the heart might behold heavenly things, and see by what way its love it might seek and busily desire. 3 years are run, except 3 months or 4. Busily desire, 3 years are run, except 3 months or 4. The door, forsooth, biting open a year nearby, I passed unto the time in which the heat of love everlasting was verily felt in heart. I sat, forsooth, in a chapel, and whilst with sweetness of prayer and meditation greatly I was delighted, suddenly in me I felt a merry heat and unknown. But at first I wondered, doubting of whom it should be. But a long time I am assured that not of the creature, but of my Maker it was. Excuse me. For more hot and gladder I found it. Oh God, I have a little bit of water. I have a little note here that says be present, right? Be present. It reminds me all the time when I'm driving, when I'm in traffic or behind someone going really slow. Or if I'm late somewhere, I'm just like, be present. It's not about where I'm getting, where I'm just be present in this place right now. It's not about finishing this book or getting further in it or knowing more. It's about just be present right now where we are. I'm going to write 38 down because that's how many minutes passed before, so I don't go over. I try to stay around an hour so that, you guys can set aside the time, or 2 times speed these things and set aside half an hour. Sometimes I'm talking fast, not usually. To this we must add a passage which I cannot but think one of the most beautiful expressions of spiritual joy to be found in mystical literature. Oh, great. It forms, as it were, a poetic gloss upon the experience just described, its sketch of the ideal mystic life, to the cultivation of which he then set himself, revealing in a few lines the charm of Rolle's character, its simplicity and gaiety, its capacity for ardent love. In it, we see reflected the exquisite and Franciscan candor of soul, which enabled him to live in his Yorkshire hermitage, as an earlier brother of the birds did upon the Umbrian hills, close to nature and close to God. That's one of my favorite places, is York. My train broke down when I was going to Scotland more than 20 years ago, and I stopped in Yorkshire because it wouldn't go past England. They were some union thing with Scotland where they wouldn't go past that, and I made these friends, and they were like, come to our house, our parents are out of town. And so I stayed in their house for a week. And then it was like before cell phones. I won't date myself, but so I had I don't know even if I had email addresses, but I went back a year later, and I just went back to the same pub on a Friday night. It happened to be I got there on a Friday or Thursday, I don't know, but they were all there, some of them, and they helped me find the others. And we kept friendship, and then we could trade cell phone numbers at that point or whatever. Anyway, Yorkshire is so beautiful. Anyway, I didn't know there were hermitages and stuff there. Okay, so quote, in the beginning, I guess she'll tell us who this is. In the beginning, truly, of my conversion and singular purpose, I thought I would be like the little bird that for love of her lover longs, but in her longing she is gladdened when he comes that she loves. Enjoying she sings, and singing she longs, but in sweetness and heat. Sweetness and heat. It is said, the nightingale to song and melody all night is given, and that she may please him to whom she is joined. How muckle more with greatest sweetness to Christ, my Jesu, should I sing, that is spouse of my soul, by all this present life, that is night in regard of clearness to come. All of this life is night in regard of clearness to come. End quote. Fire of love. She's not saying who'd said this, but anyway, glancing back at the few cases here brought together, we can see in them, I think, certain similarities and diversities, which are often of great psychological interest and importance, and which will be found to govern the subsequent development of the mystic life. We see in particular at this point, before purification or the remaking of character begins, the reaction of the natural self, its heart and its mind, upon the uprush of new truth, which operates, quote, mystical conversion, end quote. This reaction is highly significant and gives us a clue not only to the future development of the mystic, but to the general nature of man's spiritual consciousness. We have said that this consciousness is this consciousness in its full development seems to be extended not in one, but in two directions. These directions, these two fundamental ways of apprehending reality, may be called the eternal and temporal, transcendent and immanent, absolute and dynamic aspects of truth. They comprise the twofold knowledge of a God who is both being and becoming, near and far, pairs of opposites which ecstasy will carry up into a higher synthesis. You bring the two back to the one. Oh, I took my cross off, but I have a Celtic cross that has a circle, and it's like, here's the balance between the vertical, your relationship on the earth and with the heaven, with God, and the horizontal with other people, and then the circle. It brings you back to the oneness. And so there's lots of paradoxes in spiritual truths, and both are true. You have free choice to choose God, and yet you're also chosen, and he knew you were going to choose him. This beingness, being and becoming, near and far, pairs of opposites which ecstasy will carry up into a higher synthesis. But the first awakening, hold on, let me turn on, my light. But the first awakening of the mystic sense, the first breaking in of the suprasensible upon the soul, will involve the emergence of one only of these two complementary forms of perception. One side always wakes first, the incoming message always choosing the path of least resistance. Hence, mystical conversion tends to belong to one of two distinctive types, tends also, as regards its expression, to follow that temperamental inclination to objective reality as a place, a person, or a state, which we found to govern the symbolic systems of the mystics. There is first, then, the apprehension of a splendor without, an expansive, formless, ineffable vision, a snatching up of the self, as it were, from knowledge of this world to some vague yet veritable knowledge of the next. The veil parts, and the Godhead is perceived under its aspect of transcendence. Not the personal touch of love transfiguring the soul, but the impersonal glory of a transfigured universe is the dominant note of this experience, and the reaction of the self takes the form of awe and rapture rather than of intimate affection. Of such a kind was the conversion of Suso, and in a less degree of Brother Lawrence. Of this kind also were the light which Ruhlmann, R-U-L-M-A-N, Merswin saw, and the mystical perception of the being of the universe reported by Richard Jefferies and countless others. I think she's read these people so deeply that these words have, she's taking them out of this greater context from which she knows. I've read Brother Lawrence for sure. I recommend reading Practicing the Presence of God. It's not long at all, and it's really good. But I don't know these other people very much. This experience, if it is to be complete, if it is to involve the definite emergence of the self from the, quote, prison of I-hood, yes, people are so identified with their I-ness, but that's their egotism, that's their false man-made personality self that's wrapped around your essence, right? I have a video called Essence and Personality, or if you look it up, Dr. Cheryl Meyer, Essence and Personality, you'll find it. Its settling out upon the mystic way requires an act of concentration on the self's part as the complement of its initial act of expansion. It must pass beyond the stage of metaphysical rapture or fluid splendor and crystallize into a definite concept, a definite and personal relation set up between the self and the absolute life, the vitality and efficiency of the conversion from sense to spirit, says Eucken, E-U-C-K-E-N, depends on the vividness of the apprehension of the new reality and on its authority for life. And on its authority for life. To be a spectator of reality is not enough. The awakened subject is not merely to perceive transcendent life, but to participate therein. In Geoffrey's case, this crystallization, this heroic effort towards participation did not take place. And he never, therefore, laid hold of the glory that has been revealed. In Suso it did, exciting in him a most lively desire for God. In most cases, this crystallization, the personal and imperative concept which the mind constructs from the general and ineffable intuition of reality, assumes a theological character. Often it presents itself to the consciousness in the form of visions or voices, objective as the crucifix which spoke to St. Francis, or mental as the visions of the cross in Ruhlmann Merswin's and St. Catherine of Genoa. Nearly always, this concept, this intimate realization of the divine, has reference to the love and sorrow at the heart of things, the discord between perfect love and an imperfect world, whereas the complementary vision of transcendence strikes a note of rapturous joy. The beatings of the heart of God sounded like so many invitations, which thus spake. Come and do penance. Come and be reconciled. Come and be consoled. Come and be blessed. Come, my love, and receive all that the beloved can give to his beloved. Come, my bride, and enjoy my Godhead. That's in Euxon's book, I think. 2. Let's see. That might be a different Matilda of Hackborn. Liber Specialis Grateri. A book, Special Grace, I think. It is to this personal touch, to the individual appeal of an immediate presence, not to the great light and the beatific vision, that the awakened self makes its most ardent, most heroic response, not because he was rapt from himself, but because the figure on the cross called him by name, saying, "Prepare my church," did St. Francis, with that simplicity, that disregard of worldly values, which constituted his strength, accept the message in a literal sense, and set himself instantly to the work demanded, to that church, the little church he was at, bringing stones and in defiance alike of comfort and convention, building upon, with his own hands, the crumbling walls. In many conversions to the mystic life, sometimes when you're yawning, you're releasing stuff that needs to leave your body. So it can't be just tiredness, because it's only 5:50 or so here, p.m. Now, I did wake up really early, and I went to bed too late again because I was posting something that I ought to have just gone to sleep and posted it the next day. But I'm live and learn, live and learn. Crash and burn. Anyway, just so you know, in case you're yawning with me, like sometimes we're releasing stuff. And so in many conversions to the mystic life, the revelation of an external splendor, the shining vision of the transcendent spiritual world is wholly absent. The self awakes to that which is within, rather than to that which is without, to the immanent, not the transcendent God, to the personal, not the cosmic relation. Where those who look out receive the revelation of divine beauty, those who look in receive rather the wound of divine love, another aspect of the triple star. That we read before. I really need to review that because she keeps talking about of the two, of the three, and I'm like, wait, I can't remember that. If you want to put that in the comments, if you remember, if you're studious, put that down. If you've been binge watching these and it was closer to your memory, I've been spacing them out, sometimes 3 days, sometimes a week, sometimes less. I need not point out that Richard Rolle and Madame Guyon are extreme examples of this type, but it is seen in perhaps a more balanced form in St. Catherine of Genoa. Both Madame Guyon and St. Catherine compare the anguish and abruptness of that inward revelation, its rending apart of the heart tissues of I-hood. Thank God for that. And its inevitable setting in relief of their own poor finite selves to a wound. It is, quote, the wound of unmeasured love, end quote, says the legend of St. Catherine, an image in which we seem to hear the very accents of the saint. Quote, a wound full of delight, says the more effusive Frenchwoman. I wished that it might never heal. That's from Madame Guyon, because I read that last time. That's why I know. Rolle calls this piercing rapture a great heat, the heat which is to light the fire of love. As it were, if the finger were put in fire, it should be clad with feeling of burning, so the soul with love, as foresaid, set afire, truly feels most very heat. Love, passionate and all-dominant, here takes the place of that joyous awe which we notice as the characteristic reaction upon reality in conversions of the transcendent type. In the deep and strong temperaments of the great mystics, this love passes quickly, sometimes instantly, from the emotional to the volitional stage, to action. Their response to the voice of the Absolute is not merely an effusion of sentiment, but an act of will, an act often of so deep and comprehensive a kind as to involve the complete change of the outward, no less than of the inward life. Divine love, says Dionysius, draws those whom it seizes beyond themselves, and this so greatly that they belong no longer to themselves, but wholly to the object loved. Thank God, wholly to God, right? Mercewin's oath of self-surrender, St. Catherine of Genoa's passionate and decisive no more world, no more sins. St. Francis's naive and instant devotion to the church restoration in its most literal sense. These things are earnests of the reality of the change. They represent, symbolize, as well as they can, upon the sensual plane, the inevitable response of every living organism to a fresh external stimulus, its adjustment to the new conditions which that stimulus represents. It just reminds me right now, I'm reminded of a person, I won't say who, but some kind of celebrity that I'd heard his story where he was in the tidal wave. It wasn't Fiji, but it was somewhere over there, I think. And he lost a loved one in it, but he was holding on to, there's palm trees. You see those right there? He was holding on to like a palm tree and just holding on for hours and watching people go by, and it's like, if you think someone's life is going to completely change forever after an experience like that, then don't put it past a religious experience, some kind of conversion, even you just listening to this video right now. Why wait for something grand like that to happen? Just surrender your heart up to God completely. I personally don't want another one of those experiences. I've had a lot this past year. Not knowing if I was going to be alive, after a car accident and after a head injury not that long ago. 2 weeks ago I had head injury. 2 weeks ago today. And so, I encourage you, surrender now. I asked God to give me an experience like Frodo, like Gollum had to take the ring from him because I didn't trust that I would give it up myself, and I never knew it would look like this or be so hard, but I don't want to complain. I'm just saying, I'm inviting you, like that person. You don't have to go through a tidal wave. Anyway, that's just coming to my intuition right now. The Holy Spirit, let's say. I hope it's the Holy Spirit encouraging this. I asked God, please get me out of the way and speak through me, and if we get to do this book tonight, when I was walking down to the beach. Anyway, these things are earnests of the reality of the change. Remember, it's like they say the Holy Spirit is your down payment, guaranteeing what is to come. It's like pretty big down payment is the Holy Spirit, which raised Christ from the dead. That's our earnest money. That's our dowry. You know, that's like, here, I'll give you this, just so you know, the rest is coming, you know. They represent, symbolize as well as they can upon the sensual plane the inevitable response of every living organism to a fresh external stimulus, its adjustment to the new conditions which that stimulus represents. They complete the process of conversion, which is not one-sided, not merely an infusion into the surface consciousness of new truth, but rather the beginning of a life process, a breaking down of the old and building up of the new, and never to be ended give and take, now set up between the individual and the absolute. The spirit of life has been born, and the first word it learns to say is Abba, Father. Abba. Emma is mom. I looked it up the other day in Aramaic. Emma. It's like Emma. It reminded me of Auntie M, you know, Auntie M in Wizard of Oz. My brain, sometimes I can't remember things right now because my brain is sort of, the logical part's offline. Abba, Father, it aspires to its origin, to life in its most to life in its most intense manifestation. Hence, all its instincts urge it to that activity which it feels to be inseparable from life. It knows itself a member of that mighty family in which the stars are numbered, the family of the sons of God, who, free and creative, sharing the rapture of a living, striving cosmos, shout for joy. It says God knows all of the stars and each of their names, each of the stars' names, right? And we worry and we're like, oh, I wonder if he knows me. God knows us, right? Absolute infinite beingness knows every hair on my head, you know, and your head. So even in its very beginning, we see how active, how profoundly organic, how deeply and widely alive is the true contemplative life, how truly on the transcendent, as on the phenomenal plane, the law of living things is action and reaction, force and energy. The awakening of the self is to a new and more active plane of being, new and more personal relations with reality, hence to new and more real works, which it must do. That's from Dionysius the Areopagite, De Divine Nominibus. That's Latin, I think. I don't know. Anyway, we're going to a new chapter for about 10 minutes. Chapter 3. Great. The purification of the self. Awesome. And I often do this, so you can take a screenshot of what she's going to talk about this chapter if you want to look at it. If you have that where you can listen, you know, and look at something else. If you want to look at that for a little bit. Meditate on that while I'm talking in the background. Chapter 3, the purification of the self. Purification, the necessary corollary of conversion. The self's adjustment to reality, cleansing of the powers of perception, acquirement of goodness, self-knowledge, contrition, St. Catherine of Genoa on purgatory, love, the agent of purification. Love is the agent, like love, the agent of purification. Purgation accompanies the whole mystic life. Oh, great. But the purgative way is the completion of conversion. Self-simplification, cleansing, and stripping, detachment, poverty, chastity, and obedience, the fundamental mystic virtues. Great. Poverty, chastity, and obedience. Well, that's it too. Chastity in the form of, you know, I have no other gods before me. You stop bowing down to your egotism and making an idol all these other things. You're chaste in all kinds of ways, but and fasting from, you know, from all sorts of other things, and obedience. Rumi, the Sufi poet, says something like, it doesn't matter something, it matters how quickly you obey this voice that tells you, God, divine love, absolute infinite beingness, how quickly you obey that voice. Poverty, poverty where you're not running after riches and basing your worth on that. I'm sure she'll talk about it more. Chastity and obedience, the fundamental mystic virtues, spiritual poverty, the essence of liberty. Jacopina de Todi on poverty, St. Francis of Assisi, the Sacrum Commercium. Eckhart, I love Eckhart, Meister Eckhart. She's talking about the German mystic, on detachment. And she has like all of his sermons, and she has a fresh translation or something. I wish I had her collection, because mine is just, I don't know. She had a really good translation, she said. So Eckhart on detachment, an attitude, not an act, its various forms. Saint Teresa of Avila. Antoine Bourignon, Saint Duslain, perverted detachment. Okay, she's going to show the difference. Mortification, the positive aspect of purgation, the remaking of character, death of the lower nature. Once the new life is established, mortification ends. Oh, thank God. When you have the new birth. The mirror of simple souls, St. Catherine of Genoa. The psychological aspect of mortification, active suffering, the heroic side of purification, Tauler, oh good. The conquest of fastidiousness, St. Francis of Assisi. Marjorie Kemp. Oh, we read her in the class that I was in. St. Catherine of Genoa, Madame Guyon, Purgation essential to all mysticism. Its last stages, the game of love. I wonder if Freddie Mercury read that. Mercury is like mercurial. He was very into the esoteric, and he has the song, the Queen song. He's the singer of the band Queen, called The Game of Love. Play the game, play the game, play the game. It's such a beautiful song. The fluctuating transcendental consciousness, Ruhlmann Merswin, the passage from purgation to illumination, the three factors of purgative way, and conclusion. Here, then, stands the newly awakened self, aware for the first time of reality, responding to that reality by deep movements of love and of awe. She sees herself, however, not merely to be thrust into a new world, a whole new world. Na, 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 na. It's in the Aladdin movie. It's a really good song talking about awakening. You can apply it to awakening. And the other song, In Awana, does the same thing. I'm here, staring at the water, at the edge of the water. Dun, 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 dun. Everybody tells her to hold back. Okay, listen, I gotta tell you this thing today that happened so you know it. It's so good with this. I want to be in this book so much, but this lady that has written 28 books on intuition, she called her egotism like a dog, Fifi. She's like, sit, Fifi. And she's saying, like, you just have to set it down. And she's like, why would you, when you're living in your soul, tell someone this expanded, I heard it said this way, never tell your big dreams to small-minded people. But why would you tell this mystic intuition that God did give you to someone's egotism, who's someone stuck in egotism? Now, I totally agree with getting wise counsel, because we can go off and think we have a vision from God. St. John of the Cross talks a lot about discernment in that, in the ascent of Mount Carmel. And St. Ignatius of Loyola in his exercises talks about discernment of spirits, and describes exactly in about 3 pages how to do that. But it takes a long time to learn, but he describes it well there. But anyway, I loved it. It was like, no, That's what I was doing. My egotism wanted to come back online and run the show, like the dog running you, like your mind not being an instrument, your mind wanting to run instead of your soul. And so it's like it will go find someone, egotism, to reflect back to you. No, that's a stupid idea. When you know you got it in your soul, you verified it with other spiritual people. Like I have a spiritual director, thank God. I can bounce these things off of. And she's like, no, that looks like the spirit of the Antichrist. I guess God wanted you to be exposed to that. I'm like, oh, whoa, I wish no, but you have to have discernment, what to say yes to, what to say no to. And some of it looks spiritual, Anyway, that's why I love Evelyn Underhill. I feel so safe in this book, because I know that she was so dedicated, and she wrote in the more modern book I have of it, it's like the 14th edition or something. Anyway, she would have said at the beginning, throw this book away if it was off, but you all have to use your own discernment, right? Okay. So she sees herself, however, not merely to be thrust into a new world, but set at the beginning of a new road. Activity is now to be her watchword, pilgrimage, the business of her life, like pilgrim's progress on a road, And like I just did a video this week or earlier this week that says your life is an open book test. It's like our life is like a school, and it's an open book test because we have these books. We have the book of ourselves. We have the book of other saints. We have the book of Christ in this world, like divine, the word became flesh, and we have the holy scriptures to go to. It's an open book test. We have all these books that can help us, And remember what a relief you got when you went into school and you thought it was going to be a really hard test that you studied for, and she's like, or he's like, teacher's like, open book test, or you're like, yeah. It's like we have that. We have this relief. And also the Holy Spirit. Christ said this is just being reminded to me right now. Christ said that the Holy Spirit will remind us of everything Christ taught us. So that is the Holy Spirit written in us, and unfolding in us. Go into that secret place. Activity is now to be her watchword, pilgrimage, the business of her life. That a quest there is, and an end, is the single secret spoken. That's a quote. That a quest there is, and an end, is the single secret spoken. I have a playlist. I think it's on the playlist. If not, if you look up on Twitter, Dr. Cheryl M, CHERYLM, Dr. CHERYLM, and type that, my name, and Raggedy Ann and Andy. And there's the most beautiful old Raggedy Ann and Andy that talk about how you have to go to the castle to get your name. It's just such a beautiful spiritual awakening journey. I think the guy that created a Raggedy Ann and Andy lost one of his children, or his only child, to a heart attack. Don't quote me on that, and so he'd put a heart that says, I love you, inside every Raggedy Ann doll. I would cry. I could cry so much. I didn't think I was going to cry tonight. It's such a beautiful cartoon. It's like 1914 something cartoon. It's worth looking up. Part 1 and 2. All right. If you can't find it there, leave me a comment. Leave me a comment anyway. It makes my videos go out to more people if you leave a comment. Even if you just say something, say a quote, say something about an experience you've had with a sunset, or anything you'd like to say, just write down. I think it's like 6 words triggers the algorithm, and make sure to like this video, because then other people will more gravitate towards it. If they're drawn by ego, it's fine, because their soul was meant to awaken. Your soul was meant to awaken by coming here. This is a sacred space. I encourage you to share this as well with sacred other people that want to know about this stuff, or just explain. Like, this is just explaining, oh, this is describing the path I'm on and that I've studied for 30 years, Okay, that a quest there is, and an end, is the single secret spoken, right? Under one symbol or another, that long, so slow process of transcendence, of character building, whereby she has attained freedom, become capable of living upon high levels of reality, is present in her consciousness. Those to whom this secret is not imparted are no mystics, in the exact sense in which that word is here used. However great their temporary illumination may have been. Now, we're all called to be saints and mystics. That's what I was taught. Saint Teresa of Calcutta, Mother Teresa said that we're all called to be saints. And it's in the scriptures, you know. I can't remember the verse, but it's in there for sure. And the one that says we're all called to be mystics is when Jesus said there will come a time when people worship in spirit and in truth, you know, not just in the temples, because we're made out of spirit, right? That's when he's talking to the woman at the well, if you want to look that up. What must be the first step of the self upon this road? Oh, I went over. Okay, that's my math. What must be the first step of the, I'll wrap it up, of the self upon this road to perfect union with the absolute? Clearly, a getting rid of all those elements of normal experience which are not in harmony with reality, of illusion, evil, imperfection of every kind. By false desires and false thoughts, man has built up for himself a false universe. As a mollusk, by the deliberate and persistent absorption of lime and rejection of all else, can build up for itself a hard shell which shuts it from the external world, and only represents in a distorted and unrecognizable form the ocean from which it was obtained. This hard and wholly unnutritious shell, this one-sided secretion of the surface consciousness, makes, as it were, a little cave of illusion for each separate soul, a literal and deliberate getting out of the cave must be for every mystic, as it was for Plato's prisoners, the first step in the individual hunt for reality. And so just like in Plato's cave, you know, they just saw the shadows on the wall like this, you know, and they saw the shadows and they thought that was reality. They just saw people moving in the shadows, and that was all they experienced, and they didn't know the shadows were pointing to something different. Plato says that all the original forms are up in heaven, you know, just like our citizenship is up in heaven, and we're in the shadowlands. That's what C.S. Lewis calls this land. All right, I wish you so much love. I don't want to go too far over an hour. I wish you so much love. Thank you so much for being here. Share and like and subscribe. And put the notification bell on.